My name is Antonio, and I am an undocumented student activist in the state of Rhode Island. I came into this country at the age of 1 in the summer of 1992. My parents originally came from Guatemala. I was born in Guatemala, actually. They came escaping the 36-year civil war that was happening around that time. They chose to come to the United States. You know, the United States is portrayed into, other countries as a land of hope, a beacon of hope, if you can say that, a land of opportunity. So my parents came chasing and pursuing the American dream and to provide me with a better future. I grew up here in South Providence. Graduated in 2009 from Blackstone Academy and Charter High School in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So, Rhode Island, this is my community. This is where I'm from. I have never had the opportunity to be back in Guatemala due to restrictions that immigration policies have on me right now. Also, I'm involved in the right for undocumented students to pursue higher education once they graduate from high school. Nationally and locally, I'm involved in the Federal DREAM Act and in the state legislation, which is instant tuition. I can say that I'm the activist that I am today due to various experiences that I've had in my upbringing, and due to mentoring by a former organizer from Brown University who passed away May 2010. She basically was the poster child for the Federal DREAM Act. Her name is Tam Tran. Unfortunately, she's not here with us no more. She was supposed to graduate this year with a PhD in American Civilization and Ethnic Studies. But her life was cut tragically in May 2010 in an accident up in northern Maine. The most important thing that I want, our community, the youth, the educators, and all these amazing people who are here today, is that the work we are doing, it's already work that has started. And it's up to us to go on with the work. It's up to our generation to lay down the foundation and keep going for the future generations, for our youth to keep going with that work that has been started within, the Black freedom movement in the South with Dr. King, Malcolm X, Dr. Harding, and such. It's our right to be educated, and it's up to us to use education as a form to liberate ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother Antonio. And thank you, Sister Adiola. I'm here with the A's, so I feel good. My name is Vincent Harding, and thank you. When you tell me your name, I'll clap for you too, okay? I spent my childhood not far away from here, in Harlem in the South Bronx, in New York. I too was the child of immigrants. My mother and father were born in Barbados in the West Indies, and they came to this country shortly after the end of World War I. I feel a very close connection to what's going on here now, partly because my life has been deeply affected by teachers. And from the beginning of my schooling, in kindergarten, in Harlem, there were teachers who loved me, believed in me, cared about me and pushed me and pulled me forward. And I can never speak adequately about how important I understand teachers to be in the shaping of our lives, in the helping us to become the human beings that we were meant to be. My sense is that one of the deepest purposes that calls us into existence in this world is for us to help each other to figure out what it means to be human, and for us to help each other to be more human. As I understand my own pathway, I was affected also by a magnificent woman who shortly after I was born became a single mother, and who, with an 8th grade education, determined that I would learn, that I would grow, that I would go as far as I could possibly go, because she believed that I had something to offer to the world. And I think it is just magnificent that Mabel Harding, a welfare mother who had only an 8th grade education herself, believed enough in the power of education that she kept pushing me, pulling me in that direction. The other part of my earliest development was in a little church in Harlem, about 1/4 the size of this space, where everybody in that church adopted me, took me in as their child, as their son, as their nephew, as their student, and taught me that I was capable of doing many things I would never have dreamed of. And there again, the lesson for me is that we cannot become who we're meant to be unless there's a community around us who believe in us, who are willing to encourage us, and who are willing to move us forward. The other thing that I'd like to say in introduction is that I think the really transformative period of my life came when I was a graduate student at the University of Chicago back in the 1950s. And I had just begun to learn what was going on in the South, in the movement of the South. I was a part in Chicago of an experimental church group in which we were trying to develop an interracial church. And in that group, we kept saying to ourselves, well, it's great to say we are sisters and brothers and that we care about each other and that we want to serve each other and that we want to serve our community on the south side of Chicago, but would we do the same thing across racial lines if we were in the South, especially in the deep South? Is our faith in God, is our belief in the teachings of Jesus really strong enough that we would do the same thing in the South? And some of us finally said, well, let's stop talking about it. Let's stop arguing about it. Why don't we just go down there and see? And so 5 of us, 3 white guys, 2 black guys, got into an old station wagon in 1958, in the fall of 58, and decided that we would just drive through the South, the Deep South, and, if at all possible, not allow ourselves to be separated because we believed that we were brothers and that we were not meant to be separated. And that's a long story in itself that I won't try to tell. The important thing here is that after we passed through Mississippi and got into Alabama, we said, we shouldn't be in this state without trying to see and visit with Martin Luther King Jr. We knew he was there. Those were the days before cell phones. And so we said, how could we make contact with him? And we were down in Mobile, Alabama at first, and went to a place where they kept the telephone books. Anybody know where a telephone book is? And there it was, M.L. King in Montgomery, Alabama, and we called, just like that. And his wife answered the phone, said that her husband was just recuperating from a bad wound that he had received being stabbed in New York City on a book signing tour. But she said we could come and see if he could see us. He was in bed and he was under doctor's orders. The five of us got back in the car, drove up to Montgomery, appeared at the door, and when Coretta saw what crazy kinds of people these were, she said, I think my husband would really like to see you. And so the five of us went in. Martin was in his pajamas, in his bed, in his gown, but he said, come on in, I want to talk to you guys who are doing this kind of crazy thing. And we had a wonderful, long conversation with him about what he was doing, what we were trying to do. And before we left, two things just kept coming out. One was that he had this tremendous sense of humor, because he kept saying to us, men, I congratulate you for having made it through Mississippi. Then he said, at the end, as we were about to leave, he said to us two black guys, he said, you guys are part of one of those peace churches. You know something about what we're trying to do here in nonviolent movement. You want to come back down here and help us out sometime. As a result of that, 3 years later, after I'd been married for a year, my wife and I found our way back down to the South. And we, it turned out, began to live in Atlanta right around the corner from Martin and Coretta King. We began to be a part of that great movement, which I do not call a civil rights movement, but a movement for the deepening of American democracy, a movement for the transformation of this country. Civil rights was one piece of it, but the transformation of human beings and society was the larger piece. That was the thing that there is no way that I can account for the next 58 years of my life without remembering that meeting with Martin King and the long, long history that we had together until he was assassinated. So there's much more that I could say, but that was where I began. And since that time, I am perhaps most deeply moved by remembering something that I heard back again in the 1950s on the radio. You remember there used to be radios? I was listening to a broadcast and someone being interviewed was a poet who had grown up in West Africa. And I heard him say something